sad.
So sad.
And then we're at the Fall Out Boy concert.
But then we're at the Fall Out Boy concert. And Leia and Danny, Leia's wearing, I forgot to mention this Fashion Police. Leia's wearing like a really fluffy white scarf. It's very weird.
Very 2008. 2009.
And then, so she and Danny go up to like the bouncer or the door guy or something. And he.
Not a lot of people at this sold out Fall Out Boy concert at the height of their fame.
That looks like it's during the day. And then she's like, yeah, like, we're here for the show. And he's like, okay. And Danny's like, yeah, she knows Pete Wentz. And he's like, oh, yeah, sure. Like,
he's got a lot of friends today.
Yeah. And he's like, are you on the list? And Danny's like, tell him who your dad is. And she's like, Mark. I don't remember what she says.
Mark Chang? I just know the last name is
Chang. Like, he's a music producer. And the guy's like, oh, no, but Danny's like, tell him who your dad is. And the guy's
last name Wong? Fuck.
No, I think it's Chang.
Okay.
And but Danny is like, tell him who your dad is, and he's like, who's your daddy? Which I did not like. And she's like, Mark Chang. I don't think that's the first name she said, but I don't remember
Leia's
what it
dad?
was. Leia's like blah blah blah.
Mr. Leia's dad?
Yeah. And he's like, never heard of him. And she's like, he's being difficult, like, let's just leave. And then they go back to the group, and Danny's like, this dude doesn't know, like, it's like, sorry guys, this guy doesn't know how important Leia's dad is. And Peter's like, yeah, because he's not.
Actually, it's more like, yeah, she's lying. Like, yeah, she's lying. And Danny's like, oh, Sav, you would say that because you've been hitting on her. And Sav's like, really, dude? Did she tell you that? All right, bye. Like, they all leave. Like, no consequences.
They're all just like, she totally lied.
Like, they expected it. They got all dressed up, and they're like, all right, good time to go home, I guess.
And then the next scene, she and Danny are at the dawn. She's finally, like, coming clean. She's like, so I lied about all of these things. I'm just, because I was really nervous. I really wanted your friends to like me. They're so cool, and I'm not, and blah, blah, blah. And Danny's like, I thought you were cool before you even met my friends. Like, you didn't need to do any of this. And she's like, well, there's one thing I didn't lie about. I really like you. And he's like, I like you too.
And I was just so glad that they didn't break up
over this dumb thing.
It's so stupid.
But then the last scene is Jane goes into her room and she like pulls the blankets off her bed and she goes into the closet and lies down. And that's where she feels safe.
And there's kind of like a parallel there. So like she and her mom were talking and Jane's like, this is my 4th birthday. I don't remember anything. Like she's becoming increasingly concerned as to why she can't remember anything at ages where like lots of other people remember stuff. Mm-hmm. And her mom goes, oh, your dad got you this doll, Hannah. You used to make her a bed in the closet. And she's like, you know, like brain blasting, like, oh God, what does this mean? And so it's very subtle, but like maybe young Jane put Hannah in the closet to try and keep her safe.
Yeah.
And so later she decides to sleep in the closet so she can try and feel safe.
Is this when we get a flashback of like her dad tucking her in? Like we don't.
Yeah, they do not show anything, thank God.
No, they really
have a child actress.
They keep mentioning like, oh, dad used to tuck you in, and then they have like the flashbacks of like a child actress. It mostly just like focuses on her and on her face, and just like a blurry dad. And
yeah, well, they use sleeping as like a really big motif in both of these episodes. Both episodes have Jane falling asleep in like unconventional areas, probably because like the conventional being tucked into bed is what's surrounding these really repressed memories.
Yeah.
So the more she tries to avoid this, like essentially the domino effect has started. She's realizing that there's stuff she doesn't remember, and now that she's like really scared of what it might mean, she can't stop it. So she's not sleeping in her bed, she's not doing the things that she usually loves, but we see all of that more in part 2.
Yeah, so then she falls asleep in the closet, and that's the end of part 1. So then part 2, she wakes up in the closet, and she goes downstairs.
Yep.
And Lucas is there, and he's like, yeah, Dad, he hooked me up. And he's like, look, like...
He has a
like
job interview.
Like, the dad got him a job interview, which is like, good for you, Lucas. Sure. And then Jane is like, I need to leave. But then we are at school, and...
Yeah, speaking of the B plot, you know how the B plot starts out? Ageism.
What?
They're chanting cheers, and they're like, you can't beat us because you're old. Because, like, the big alumni versus the current football player.
So then we're at school, and we see the cheerleaders cheering, and their cheers are still just so wordy. They're so wordy. They're terrible and wooden. And then Jane comes into the gym to talk to... Oh, yeah, because Izzy had spent the night, and Jane is now feeling really weirded out by that. And she goes to talk to Mia to, like, check in on how Izzy was. She's like, Izzy was okay after the sleepover. Like, she's all good. And Mia's like, oh, yeah, she, like, loves your mom. And she really hit off your dad. Like, she really wants to do it again. And Jane's like, no, don't do it again. And Mia's like, why? And she's like, things are all weird with, like, the family right now. It's not a good time. And Mia's like, okay, I guess. I'm going to go back to cheer practice.
I don't know if this is intentional, but Mia did look pretty sad about that. Like, she didn't argue, but I could tell that even though she and Lucas are never getting back together again, and she probably has no interest in that, she does, like, still have that, like, I want Izzy to know her dad, and the fact that you're, like, restricting her right after she met her grandpa for the first time. Like, I don't know. It seemed really subtle, but she seemed just, like really disappointed that Jane was like, Izzy shouldn't be around.
Yeah, I can see that.
And then we see Shantae.
Oh my gosh. But then we see Shantae, and we, like, in the newbie plot, because the other one, like, was done for the first part. Whoa,
you're saying that didn't have enough meat and substance to travel into part 2?
Oh my god. So then Shantae comes over, and she sees Claire putting up a sign for, like, the clothing drive she's throwing or something. And Shantae is like, helping out others? How Angelina of you. And it's like, okay, go away, Shantae. And then Alli walks over, and she's wearing, like, her sweatshirt and her, like, parent clothing. And Claire's like, why are you wearing that? And Allie's like, my mom found all my school clothes and she threw them all out, so now I'm stuck looking like this. And then Allie kind of starts raiding through, like, the clothes that are being donated, and Claire's like, this is for the less fortunate, you can't dive through this stuff. And Allie's like, I am less fortunate, look at me. And then Johnny DeMarco comes over and is like, hey, Bandari, like, looking good, or something like that. And Allie's like, oh, hey, swoon. And
but then she's like, he thinks I'm hideous. Like, okay, this is my first introduction to Alli. I immediately love her. Even though she's definitely very spoiled person. She just knows who she is and what she's about.
That's true. But she also can be terrible, aka in the last episode.
Showcased in this next episode.
Yeah, that's also true. She just is very flies by her emotions and her emotions only.
It's just like I don't think she's had her worldview challenged too much yet.
Yeah.
So she's still very inward focused. She's still learning how to expand her worldview.
Mm-hmm. But then we're with Spinner and Jane. Like, Jane, like, gets in the car to talk to Spinner. And Spinner, like, automatically knows that something's wrong.
It's being a good boyfriend.
And he's like, what's going on? And she's like, my dad. It's like, things are weird with my dad. Like, I don't know. And he's like, well, at least you have a dad around. I'd give anything to have my dad back. And Jane's like, I'd trade you. And then he, looks at her all weird. And she's like, I'm sorry. I didn't mean that. I gotta go. And he's like, tell me what's going on.
He gets mad, like, justifiably by that comment. But I have a problem with his comment because, like, their dad situation is so not different. The same.
They're so different.
Like, Spinner lost his father, who he was close to cancer. That's really terrible. But that does not invalidate Jane having a bad relationship with her dad.
Exactly.
Like, Spinner getting on his high horse and being like, listen, maybe you need to revisit your dad. Like, to be fair, he doesn't know the details. Like, not even Jane knows the details at this point.
But he knows that he, at the bare minimum, like, left her when she was 5.
And I feel like this is Spinner. That seems like something that Spinner would, like, have a very hard time forgiving. Like,
yeah.
He is all about getting on a cause and then, like, stubbornly being for that cause for a while. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's just like...
But I think, like, even after she said that, he's mad for... He's like...
He's upset, but he's like...
upset, but he's like, wait, what is going on with you?
Concerned.
Yeah. And then she, like, runs out of the car and runs away from him. And then we're at Claire's house with Claire and Alli, and Claire's like, here, like, you don't need to go through the clothing donations. You can borrow some of Darcy's clothes that she left here. And Alli is like, why don't you have access to all of these clothes all the time and you don't wear them? Like, what's wrong with you? And then this is when, like, the makeover montage thing happens.
Oh, there are purple things with, like, shiny silver patches. It was very nostalgic.
Yeah. And, like, Claire's hair is down and, like, straightened, and it looks very cute. And then they decide to go to the Dot, like, wearing their new clothes. And then...
This is honestly my favorite part, where Peter's like, hey, Claire, you look good. Are those clothes? It's like, yeah, they're Darcy's. And he's like, I have to go.
It's like, oh, weird. And he's like, well, you look much better. And I'm like, fucking shut up, Peter.
Peter can't be a douche even when giving a compliment.
Oh, my God. And then they sit down, and then the fucking Reese-brimmed beanie dude is like, what's your name, cutie? And then Claire kind of, like, looks around because he thinks he's talking to Alli.
Alli.
And he's like, I was talking to her. And Claire's like, me? It's Claire. And he's like, I'm Reese. And then Alli is so fucking butthurt. And she's like, let's get back to studying for chemistry. And then Jane gets home, and Lucas is like, hey, guess what? I'm an office security guard now. Woohoo, I got the job. And then Jane is like, why did Dad leave? Like, she kind of glosses over it, and he's like, oh, yeah, congratulations, Lucas. And she's like, no, like, can we please talk about, like, do you remember what happened back then? Like, why did Dad leave? And Lucas is like, you always just want his attention. Like, I'm done with you, like, talking about this, you and your backwards pajamas. And I was like, what does that mean? And then that triggers something in her.
This is like, we finally get Lucas's perspective here. Like, why Lucas is such, like, a huge fucking douchebag all the time, and, like, why he always makes everything, she's like, oh, Jane just wants attention. Like, and, like, he says all this shit about Jane, even in the past when he was actually on the show more. Like, and you're just like, where the fuck is this coming from? Jane's the coolest.
Yeah.
And it's because from his perspective, like, he was a lonely kid. Their mom was working all the time. But to him, Jane and their dad had, like, a super big bond, and he was always left out.
Yeah.
And so to him, it's
like Jane is like, they had this whole bond, and now she's, like, not even appreciating it when all he wanted was to, like, hang out with his dad as much as he hung out with Jane. And, like, that's his perspective.
So he just thinks she's being a big drama queen because that's all he knew as, like, a 10-year-old or some shit.
Or, like, 7-year-old.
Yeah, just real little, and he's still acting like a small child.
And then I think this is when we get the full flashback.
It's just the worst vibes.
It's just, she remembers exactly what happens, and she's like, and then she's like, I'm leaving, I'm going to Spinners, I'm spending the night there, like, I have to leave, because I think the dad is, like, going to come over soon.
She rushes out of the house.
And then she kind of just walking around outside, and then she finds a bench and curls up on the bench and ends up sleeping on this bench. And again, it's like another unconventional place where she is sleeping because she doesn't feel safe sleeping in her own bed.
The closet, the cot, and now the bench.
And it's just so sad.
Yeah.
It's really hard to watch.
And it's just, like, the way this is portrayed is just, like, a small girl in a bed, and you just hear the disembodied voice of the dad being like, Janie Bear, I will fix your backwards pajamas. Like, nothing is explicitly shown or said, but it's as unambiguous as ambiguity can be.
Oh, I think her dad calls her Janie Bear at one point.
That's what he called her, Janie Bear, at dinner. It's like, I hated those pajamas. Oh, your Nuna got you those pajamas. And then she's like, then why would I hate them and associate them with my dad?
No, I think it's later. Like, her mom comes in and is like, so you're cool with your dad hanging out more, right? And then, like, later he comes into her room and he's like, thanks for, like, saying you're cool with me hanging out now.
That's the beginning of the second episode.
Yeah, I think we just glossed over it. And that's when he calls her Janie Bear. And that's, like, another, like...
That's actually... Yeah,
I think that triggers, like, the memory that came before this one.
Yeah,
anyway, whatever. She's curled up on the bench, and it's very sad.
Yeah.
But then the next day at school, that's when, like, Claire arrives.